Hi, everybody. Jonathan Broadbent here. It is 5 o'clock on the nose, Monday, November 13th. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, and you're here with us today on UnWoke Academy. Thanks for joining us. Today, I want to talk a little bit about ammo, bullets, guns, bombs, missiles, and ammo. If you'll humor me for a moment, I'm going to describe where we are in the world right now in terms of war and warfare. I know it's unpleasant, but we need to think about it that way. And candidly, I make the argument that we are actually at war. As a side note, if you haven't already, I've mentioned it a few times, look up the two generals and something called fifth generation warfare. Those are very enlightening, and you can also read The Art of War. Those are great books, but basically the concept boils down to this. There is a strategy in warfare, and it's new. It's a newish concept that basically is anything but. What it means is anything except typical kinetic warfare can be used to soften an enemy. I believe that there's an argument to be made that that's what America is experiencing right now. We have everything is turned upside down and backward and inverted and wrong. Our legal system, our justice system, our judiciary, currency. So looked at that way, and I actually believe that, and I can make an argument to this effect. I'd love to debate anybody that feels otherwise, but the strategy is basically to destabilize a currency, use manipulative things called psychological warfare, take over media and media organizations like news, disrupt supply chain, do damaging and disruptive things to medicine and medical, you name it. And a lot of it revolves around sort of demoralizing a society. So I believe that that's where we are right now in America, and that's what we're experiencing. And looked at through that lens, it starts to make a lot of sense. And we start to think differently about how we fight back and try to reclaim American values, the freedoms and liberties that we hold so dear. And instead of sort of waiting for that next phase, looked at through that lens, we no longer talk in terms of the possibility, quote unquote, of World War III starting. I believe that we're in it. We're seeing signs of it clearly all over Europe and the Middle East, what's happening between the Palestinians and Israel, and certainly in the United States. We're seeing a lot of signs of recurring, almost scheduled unrest with different flags and all that stuff. By the way, I've commented on the prolific use of flags, tens and tens of thousands of flags. I keep encouraging people to go and find out where those flags are coming from, because if you find who ordered the flags and then shipped and distributed to key strategic locations at certain times for what are these pop-up mobs, and as an example, the I know I'm on a tangent. I'm going to get back to my point, but the sudden proliferation of these global pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine movements within 24 hours of the attacks on Israel on October 7th are pretty telling. Keep encouraging somebody to go through and do the research, a media organization, and find out how it is that all those thousands and thousands and thousands of Palestine flags, they're all identical, pristine, brand new, ended up in Paris and Berlin and London and New York and all those places simultaneously with massive mobs that, like, within, I think it was within 24, maybe 48 hours, there were all those huge protests. So people were kind of stunned by that. But my question is on the flags. How did they get there? Who ordered them? Who had them shipped? It's similar in my mind to the question during 2020 of how the bricks got in pallets to places where Antifa movements and some of the destructive wave that hit the United States and parts of Europe in 2020 came about. Somebody organized those. And I believe in the rule of law, and I believe that somebody should be held accountable. And lots of people, actually, the people in particular that organized it, and certainly those people that were that fell victim to all the rhetoric and participated in all that damage and destruction. They ruined a lot of small business, etc. But that brings me to my point. If I've gotten you to the point where you agree that we are in a form of soft coup, a World War III that is so far primarily an everything but strategy. It's destabilizing everything while not yet going to bombs and bullets. Then the question becomes, how do we fight back against that? Part of it, as is commonly quoted in terrorist sorts of environments, don't give in to fear. It gets nowhere. That's what's wanted. That's what's desired of you, of us, is that we cower in fear and let all the damage happen, because then there's no coming back. The other thing is we should be participating in trying to assert ourselves and assert our values and our principles, both online. Yes, I know it can be really uncomfortable online because many platforms are just dominated by people who seem to hold everything that we in the West hold dear, like our freedoms, our liberties, things like our First Amendment, Second Amendment, the value of education for children. We are scoffed and scorned, and we get the frowny faces and thumbs down and all that stuff on social media. But ignore that. And I encourage you to keep asserting your voice and calling out wrong. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And if it's true, you need to keep saying it and keep asserting that truth. Or before you know it, everything gets inverted and we get inverted morality and the bad guys win. But here's where UnWoke comes in. Think of this dynamic that I've described, this type of structural warfare, as everything but when we are giving money to organizations that clearly seem to have anti-American sentiment, we're funding the enemy. It's like in a regular time of war, a traditional war that we think of, like from movies and TV shows, it's just like packing up and sending bombs and bullets to our enemies. We are funding them. We are giving them the tools and resources they need to defeat us. It just makes no sense. So starting a long time ago, when I turned whistleblower on something called ESG, which stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance, I have been fighting to try to get more awareness of the harmful, damaging impact of things like ESG. It's connected to all kinds of other horrible things like social credit system, which you're probably hearing a lot about. Something called CBDC, centralized banking digital currency, which is basically giving all control over money, finance, currency, and commerce to big government, which should horrify anybody and everybody. And then something called corporate equity index, which is a club with which big globalists beat up companies and force them to do self-harm. All of that stuff bundled up, they thrive on, they will succeed only if we let them, which means allowing them to continue to manipulate, twist, propagandize, and lie to we the people. But also, they succeed if we continue to give them our money. I started on August 4th of 2022 with a big expose on a company called BlackRock. I went on to another company called Vanguard. Between the two of them, they now control vast sums of money. Like I think BlackRock alone is valued at around $10 trillion. And they're doing all kinds of things that represent significant imminent harm to we the people. For instance, buying up farmland in the US, buying homes and properties, real properties all over the country, pushing for something called 15-minute cities, which also ties in with that whole centralized banking digital currency and the 15-minute, this sort of circle you're not really supposed to be able to be allowed to travel outside of. Um, what was the movie Mockingbird? Something I've forgotten those the movies with the young lady that has to fight back, but they can only live within these sort of gated little communes, and they overlords dictate. That's worth watching. I love sci-fi, by the way. Um, but so the unwoke thing is putting spotlight on all of that. It's to instruct and inform we the people, patriots, not just of the US, but anywhere in the world, of the companies that we can clearly see are aligned against our interests, against we the people. Those are the companies, those are the people behind those companies that are pulling the strings, that are using things like corporate equity index to force them to do harm. I argue, are the very same people that are riling up and pitting us against each other. They've created an environment that is untenable. The all of the gender dysphoria and confusion, the LGBTQ plus flags, the Palestine versus Israel thing is ramped back up again. That, for their purposes, is helpful to them. So all of that stuff, it fits in the category of a new type of warfare that we need to be aware of, and we need to be armed with information to fight back against. So next step in the puzzle, we need to know not just where the bad stuff is, but we need to know some direction as to where the good stuff can be found. In developing UnWoke, building that sort of voice, gaining some following and awareness, the plan for a long time was I built a friendship with a group that started an outfit called Second Vote. You can look it up at secondvote.com. That website is still up for the time being. However, they have closed. Here's a sort of a twisting, winding. It's one of those one door opens, another one door closes, another door opens kind of scenario. But we actually had a long period of conversation. I made arrangements for anybody that didn't have an idea about where to go to get unwoke themselves, following our guidance on the places not to go, could go to Second Vote, and we arranged for a discount on their services. So they're doing investment management based on 12 years of Judeo-Christian analysis. So they have what's referred to as, or actually I think I just call it the 6 pillars of freedom. You'll see it on the webpage when you go to secondvote.com. You scroll down and it shows how they grade and rank these companies. Some of those companies are publicly traded and can be turned into a portfolio of investments. And that's what Second Vote had done. As I said, they closed in August, and that really stunned me. It came as a surprise. I've gotten to know the owner and founder, great group of people that organized and ran that. They have massive data over 12 years. They've compiled on tens of thousands of companies. And I made this suggestion as I learned that they were closing, that first and foremost, their work can't be allowed to dissolve. They've done huge amounts of work over a decade, over 12 years. And so I suggested that somebody should pick up the reins and run with it. Well, that's turned out to be me. And I am partly, this message and ones like it are an appeal to other people in finance, anywhere in finance. Or if you've got just a technical skill capability, able to run spreadsheets and understand numbers and finance, contact me, because we want to grow the team and grow what Second Vote and UnWoke is. But all of that is now coming over to me and my leadership. All of the Second Vote analytics, their research, the methodology, the intellectual property, everything is all being shipped over. I've got massive servers now, and I've got a development team that I'm talking to. It's a huge, huge undertaking. But actually, frankly, I've got big plans for it. I've got big dreams of making this into an app and all kinds of stuff. So then, putting this all together, not only is UnWoke putting ourselves in a position to encourage people to stop sending that proverbial, air quoted again, that ammo and bullets and bombs and missiles to our enemies for use against us, because they are. Trust me, believe me. You can look it up yourself and do your own research. Many of these big Wall Street mega bank globalist types of companies, they're using our money against us. We cannot continue to allow that to happen. But the next step is building, I'm going to call it parallel economy, building alternatives that make sense for us, for we the people. Again, I keep saying this. I use the term we the people in a much more broad and global sense. I believe there are people all over the world who get along beautifully together when big government and big globalist billionaires take their hands out of the puzzle and stop antagonizing. Those people, like the farmers in Finland who are fighting back, hoorah, kudos to them. The people in England who are fighting back against the surveillance state, all over the place, all over the world. There are people there. I just stumbled onto a group on Twitter this morning, as a matter of fact, that is fighting communism in China. Those, in my mind, those are we the people. Those are, to me, those are my brethren. Those are my brothers and sisters. I believe in the solidly in that principle that we are our brothers and sisters keepers. Those people too need to have signs of hope and courage to pursue freedom and liberty. That's where UnWoke comes in. Last thing on that, when we talk about UnWoke, sort of think about three categories. Broadly speaking, you've got the far left. There's a graphic that I did a few releases ago. On that far left, you've got sort of this murky, opaque, not really sure what you're buying. It has all kinds of labels attached to it, like DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ESG, which again is environmental, social, and governance, and all kinds of great cutesy sounding things, but there's nobody. I challenge you to find somebody that could actually go in there and see it and define it in a way that allows you to delineate and understand why some companies and managers are selected for that pool, that type of investing, and some others aren't. That far left stuff, that world is just hungry for lawsuits. And you're seeing it now with the American Airlines pilots, New York City's workers union, all kinds of places are suing the management of that because it's nonsense. And I quite literally hoot and holler and jump up and down and clap and applaud them. More lawsuits need to happen because that over there is nonsense. But the middle of the road, people who just say, hey, I just want my investments left alone. Get your politics out of my portfolio. That's most people. Then there are conservatives who believe in things on the quote unquote right. Those are people who are pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment, etc. Where UnWoke fits is everything except that far left stuff. We're going to uncover that and point to it and tell people that's damaging. It's harmful. It harms us globally, all of us, we the people. The other stuff in the middle, all day long, that's UnWoke. The conservative stuff, right-leaning, all day long. We actually can build portfolios, and we're starting to do it again. We're ramping up, and we're going to encourage and help people all across that whole world of investing and try to get the money from the big globalist Wall Street billionaire type managers out of the hands and out of being artificially funneled into the garbage on that far left. So Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for more episodes of Unwoke Academy. I'm Jonathan Broadbent.